That was Frank Agin, the founder of AmSpirit Business Connections, and a good personal friend of mine. AmSpirit is a network of business owners, leaders, and founders all across the Midwest United States. There's over 140 chapters and 1,500 of these business leaders. Frank has been able to, better than anyone, build a network through compounding efforts in other people. Better than anyone that I've ever met, he's just able to articulate the slow compounding growth of investing in other people and what that can do to build not just a life, a business, a career that you like and enjoy. He's also a very happy person. And this is sort of a rare combo of business success and personal fulfillment and happiness that I just don't see very often. And it's why I wanted to share him with our Marketing by Design audience today. Today, Frank's going to teach you and I how to find your people and more of them, how to give and get better referrals for your own business, what powerful storytelling is, and the drastic impact it's had on his own business. I want to say a huge thank you to Frank and also our friends over at the American Marketing Association Columbus chapter for being our presenting sponsors for this episode and every episode of Marketing by Design. Thank you for coming back to entry number 95 of Marketing by Design, where we talk to marketers, founders about how marketing and design drive revenue for businesses. All of our resources and partners will be located down below. Be sure to check them out. And without further ado, let's dive on in. Please welcome Frank Agin to the show. Okay, Frank, so I'm going to start by telling you a little bit of a story. So as we kind of talked about a little bit off camera, I worked at a design agency for about a year before founding MMG in the company. And I was in a community group at the time called Web Designer Pro, and they're based here locally. And it's a community group of other web design freelancers and creatives. And I got in touch with the community manager of that group, and his name was Josh Hall. Josh kind of passively, and there's members of this organization that are all around the country, right? Kind of like AmSpirit, coincidentally. But Josh Hall sort of passively mentioned this thing called AmSpirit as a way of networking and getting referrals and trying to build a business, a web design business from scratch. And I remember one of our first interactions over a year ago now was kind of roasting each other through email. The biggest takeaway for me was that you were very accessible just from the very beginning. I had no idea the first time I talked to you that you were the one that had founded the company, and I was emailing you right off the bat. And here I am, was just nobody in Marysville, Ohio. Just started my own business, and you communicated very well and personally. So that's how I got in touch. How do you sort of maintain like a conversational value like that and make yourself so accessible? I mean, to people just getting in, because you've built an incredible network. You have a really big reach. And how do you maintain that balance of, the personalization and making yourself accessible to new people like that?
Well, people say that to me from time to time, thanks for making the time, but in reality, yeah, I am busy, but I'm busy doing that. That's what I do. I mean, that's just, years ago I was involved in, before it was AmSpirit, it was another organization. It was run by a woman in Pittsburgh, and I bought her out and rebranded it. This was, 25 years ago now. People would call her, this is all pre-email, people would call her and, what do you want? That was her response. And it was ironic, because it's like, we're in a people business, and Andy, I don't always have great days, right? And some days I just need to stay away from my own worst enemy. But the organization's here to help people, and I need to help people get within the organization or find the help that they need. Not everybody I come across is a member for a prospective member for AmSpirit. They don't all fit. I was telling you before we hit record, I'm talking to a guy in the UK. He's got a business, and I don't have any chapters over there. I've got a million places in the United States I need to be starting chapters, but I'm still going to help him because I know a guy in Australia, or I know a woman in Estonia. It's just part of what we need to be doing.
I think it's kind of hard to honestly find that balance, because you'll hear conflicting advice from people that say to stay focused and there comes a point too where, I mean, Frank, you've talked to like so many business owners. You've talked to so many people that are still refining what they do, and they just need opportunities, right? They need to create the conversations and just letting other people know about what they do. It's the foundation kind of what we talk about here is marketing and making the process of making people aware of what you do and how it can help them. I think there's so many overlaps in terms of and there's case studies on both sides as well. People that have said yes to a lot and it turns out positively, and there's people that have said yes to a lot of the wrong things as well, and it doesn't turn out the way that they would like. But I think that's a really good springboard sort of into the topic of how you build AmSpirit. And I know you didn't start it from scratch. You kind of acquired a long time ago, but it's been, 20, I think 28 years, 1997.
Yeah, 97. Well, the quick backstory, I was an attorney. I worked for a big
Uh-huh.
firm as a tax consultant. Left in January of 95 to go into private practice.
Uh-huh.
February 95, I joined a chapter of this organization, was based out of Pittsburgh. Took to it like a fish to water, because it just made total sense. It's a great way to get business. Had an opportunity to become its first franchisee in June of 97, and then it was 2003-ish, that I bought it out and rebranded it.
Nice. And I think like, but still, that's how many chapters was it when you first rebranded it in '03? I'm
Well,
taking you back.
when I franchised, it was probably 6. And just to clarify your numbers, we're at about 140 chapters, not 180, and the
Okay.
membership is close to 1,500. I like your numbers better than mine, but but mine are
I was trying to
reality.
make you look good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. But when I took over, it may have been close to 20. As in the moment, you never really keep track of statistics, but as time goes
Uh-huh.
on, I'm scrambling to go back and say, okay, what were things? It wasn't what it is today. I have a lot of great franchisees who are, well, Tom Anderson is somebody you probably know, but there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
a lot of great people who have not just helped me, start chapters and work with members, but just even coming up with ideas and, hey, we should do this or we should do that. Nobody does anything alone, and that I'm a case study in that. My all my financial stuff, my accounting, my wife helped put together, and it's just a lot of people.
I think there's a real like, and ever since I've not just been in AmSpirit, but known you personally, is you. There's so much alignment in terms of what I get from you on a personal level versus like what the values of AmSpirit are, and even in things like email, right? It's so one to one and it's so personalized. Like I literally feel like, I read an email and I don't know how many people it goes out to. I know the list is large, but it feels like I'm just having a conversation with Frank every time I get an email. So, like, if there's like for all the more meetings and notifications, things like that that come up, I think that the value of like how you're able to communicate and how it resonates with the members, like it comes across very well. And I just want to say that as someone that's been in it for a little bit. But I think you do a really good job of also sort of portraying the values of it and being honest too about what it takes. So when a lot of people hear networking, especially in marketing, they think of, okay, they're in it for themselves. Like what is it that what is the ROI on this for me? And the biggest thing that I like to say when we talk to other marketers that are, in my network and that listen to the show is that you get out of things like what you put into them. And like, I wanted to give you kind of a platform to talk about this 30-second elevator pitch of yours because it's not just been transformational for me as someone that needs like a dummy proof framework to get started, but I also see it as something that gets the best response when I talk about it with other guests as well. But what does that 30-second elevator pitch look like and what's the genesis of that for you?
I guess I don't totally understand the question. Can you say like the 30-second commercial you might give in a
30, yeah,
meeting? Or?
yeah.
Yeah, well, here's this might all sound a little contradictory, but people out there kind of coach individuals to have a good 30-second commercial. And I'm all about people having a good 30-second commercial. But I think what a good 30-second commercial is, something that's going to, that when you're meeting somebody for the first time, you can kind of give them the rundown. This is who I am, this is what I do, and this is the type of thing that I need to help me. And I think that's helpful. But what I tell people is don't get too caught up in having one great 30-second commercial. Because the reality, Andy, is when you meet somebody for the first time, you're going to give your 30-second commercial, and that's wonderful. But business seldom transpires in that first meeting, right?
Uh-huh.
Especially the business you're looking for. If you're selling flowers or candles or something like that, then you might, the business is done and you don't make a lot of money. But if when you're working with somebody and the deliverables are going to require hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, it's not going to happen in that first meeting. And so you're going to have subsequent meetings, or if you're relying on somebody for referrals, you're going to have subsequent meetings. And so when you get to that subsequent meeting, all of a sudden, that great 30-second commercial you have really doesn't have as much value. You're not going
Uh-huh.
to, well, I help people buy and sell houses. You're not going to keep saying that over and over again. And if you do, you're going to run into problems because it doesn't really help people identify how they can help you. And so
Uh-huh.
a lot of what I share with people is don't tell me what you do, tell me when you do it, right? Okay, you're a marketing person. That's what you do. And you know what that means. You know exactly all the things you can do for a client. And I look back when I was an attorney and in a group, I would tell people, well, I'm an attorney, anybody who needs an attorney. And I knew what attorneys did, but nobody else did. And I wasn't getting referrals, but I started to get referrals when that morphed from talking about what I do to talking about when I do it. You know,
Uh-huh.
hey, if you know somebody out there who might be renting commercial space, that's a good time where I could really help. They have a lease that's an inch thick. Nobody knows what it says except the person that wrote it and maybe me. That's a when. And for you,
Uh-huh.
there are whens. When do you provide marketing support for companies? And when you start talking about the little nuances, the little things that you do, those things are like Velcro in people's brains. Then all of a sudden,
Uh-huh.
when they come across something, it's like, oh, I'm thinking of Andy. Oh my gosh, he mentioned this is the perfect situation. And then it's just helping them segue from recognizing an opportunity, which will come into your 30-second commercial, to talking about you. So I always tell people, certainly in like the AmSpirit world, don't have one 30-second commercial, have 100
Uh-huh.
mediocre ones that get people thinking about you. Now, I have people who say something different every week in the organization, and ultimately they're the ones who become successful.
Yeah, I think this idea of like social awareness is a really big piece of everything, and that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Because, I mean, Frank, I'm very glad that a lot of those first 30-second commercials from the Dublin chapter AM Spirit meetings that I attended were not recorded or on any sort of saved format, because it is, and I mean, you go through this process of trying to find where people get the most value out of what you do and how you can help people. And you don't know that until you get the reps, until you pass the bucket every week. You've had the opportunity to meet people where they're at in terms of them removing yourself from your head and recognizing, okay, you're going about through your day to day. What's important to you? And how can I solve that thing? How can I be an ally to you? I think the people that I've seen be the most successful in AM Spirit, like Conway and Mike and people like that, they know how to do that. They have a repeatable thing that that are identifiers for
Yep.
potential clients, and they're able to elaborate them very well because speaking confidently is a big part of it too. So tell me, like, when sort of this is, I kind of wanted, what we kind of do here is like zoom in and zoom out. So I like to have some practical applications that like the audience can learn from you, and a little bit of storytelling as well, because you are a mildly interesting person, I think. So when you talk about, AMP Spirit, what are some of the core values that you've been like really consistent on? And so what would your 30-second elevator or 30-second commercial be for like AMP Spirit? And what are some of the values that you stayed very consistent with over the last 20 years or so?
Yeah, as far as a 30-second commercial, I'll just, and it depends on the audience. I will share, that we're a referral based networking group. There are lots of different types of networking groups. We are hyper focused on referrals, and usually if I'm in a setting where I don't know people, that leads to more conversation. They want to kind of dig into, because people want referrals. So I think, as far as core values, it really comes down to giving. It really comes down to, it's a very interesting situation, because you came to AmSpirit Business Connections because you wanted business, right? I mean, that's
Uh-huh.
everybody. But once you're there, you quickly realize that if I'm going to get things from these people, I need to do things for them. I need to give them referrals. And when I do things for other people, then they're inclined to give things back. So it's really an organization about giving, and from that giving we get. And so that's a value that we have stuck with, you know, well, we have to stick with it because that's just human nature. It's just
Yeah.
human nature. Like, can I tell a quick story?
Yeah. Go for it, man. That's what we're here for.
Okay. And this isn't my story. This is the story of humanity, really. And I heard this story on my podcast. And the second I heard it, it was done with the show, as the files are all uploading, I went and I researched it. But there's a famous anthropologist out there. Her name is Margaret Mead. And she died in 1978, but she did a lot of great work in anthropology. Well, she was teaching a class, and one of the students asked, what was the first sign of human civilization? And she was just, as she was kind of gathering her answer, the students were thinking to themselves, is it clay pots? Is it weapons? Was it fire? And her answer was, the first sign of human civilization was a healed femur. And the femur is the bone that connects the knee to the hip. And without modern medical care, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for that to heal. Well, she went on to explain, she said, in the animal world, most animals have a femur. In the animal world, when we came across you don't see animals that had healed femurs. When they have a broken femur, it's a death sentence. They can't move, they can't protect themselves, they can't forage, they can't get water, they just die. It's either a quick, painful death at the hands of a predator, or it's a slow, agonizing, path to starvation. But when we came across the remains of humans that had a healed femur, we knew there was something different. We knew that there were people who were willing to stay behind and sacrifice themselves. And at this time, we were a very nomadic society, if you will.
Uh-huh.
How that plays out, why that is important, is if you stop and think about it. Let's say you have two groups of people, and you have a group of 4 people, and someone breaks their femur, and 3 of the people say, sorry about your luck, we're moving on. Well, the one person is going to die because they have a broken femur. The other 3 are less likely to survive because they're one less strong, right? They're 25% less strong when they had 4. And so 3 will become 2, and 2 will become 1, and 2 can't survive on their own, and so it's a death sentence.
Uh-huh.
But if you have the other 4 and one person breaks their femur, and the other 3 are like, you know what? I'm not sure why, but we are staying behind. We're going to care for this person because it's just the right thing to do. All of a sudden, 6 to 8 weeks later, that group advances forward, not 3 people, but 4 people.
Uh-huh.
Right? And 4 is stronger than 3. It's 33% stronger than 3. And not only does it advance forward with being stronger, it advances forward with somebody who says, you know what? These people cared about me. When the tables are turned, I'm going to care about them. And
Uh-huh.
that gene pool survived. So this happened, this playing out over generations and generations and generations, and we formed these cities, Columbus, Cincinnati, whatever. That is baked into our DNA. So
Uh-huh.
when you ask what our core philosophy it is, it's about caring for other people. You just care
Uh-huh.
about the other people in the group, because that's what we look for as humans. We look for people who are going to care about us. People marry somebody who's going to care about them. People go into business with people that are going to care about them. And to have people care, we need to have that reciprocity. So, to me, that story is fascinating. And it is really the story of humanity and why And I know humanity's not perfect, but it's really the story, why humanity's where it's at. And really why AmSpirit works is because you bring together people, Bruce in your chapter, and people who care about one another. It's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. But that's, you know, anyhow.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy, and I think that's why I mean that's the word I keep coming back to is just consistency in the messaging, and when you talk about it, you can tell there's a lot of passion there. But man, I wish you hadn't brought up Bruce because I'm not going to be able to keep a straight face now. But
He's a great guy. Yeah, he's a good guy.
yeah, when you talk about consistency, that man, that's
Yeah.
he wears that to he is the textbook definition. I hope everyone listening to the show has a chance to meet a Bruce Johnson at some point in their life. But yeah, that was really good. I think in terms of it can seem overwhelming when you first start, right? I mean, and that's why we encourage a lot of people to think of themselves as a business, but I think a lot of that gets lost in like these core principles of human nature. They get lost when the moment you feel like you are running a business and you have to fend for yourself, right? I mean, you even said like that's the big reason why people join is because they want referrals. They have the personal interest, and a big thing it's taught me as well is that there are just being more aware of where you can meet people at, and that's because that's the default, right? What is like the what's in it for me mindset. And I think the biggest practice of going to a chapter like AmSpirit, hearing other stories and being able to find where you can add value to them helps you remove yourself from that mindset. And that's why like it's a weekly habit for me because when you're able to do that and people that do it well, you start to see case studies of people that have been in it for the long time. Like they're just there's the common analogy that like networking takes 2 to 3 years, but after that, then it starts to compound at like a rapid rate. And it's in the beginning, you have to really remove yourself from any selfish intentions and then be bought in it for the long haul. It's so consistent with other things like fitness, relationships, and the people that when you acknowledge it when from the beginning when you're in it for the long haul, it changes your incentives and it makes it something that you come back to every week just for the sake of meeting other people and getting the most out of it. Have there been any, like, when you think of a home run case study of what, like, a really good example of when you've seen, like, AmSpirit really benefit another organization? Maybe if you had, like, a shining member that has been in it for a long time and they've uplifted others in a way that you think is exemplary. Do you have any stories you could tell about some members that have really just been case studies? I know Justice Sharp he's in Balula chapter. That guy, I've learned a lot just from that guy in terms of what he's able to do for others, and his chapter has been just up and to the right. But I think like having like practical examples of people that, are case studies of AmSpirit is a really good thing people can tie back to. So if you could pick out like a shining member of people that exemplify your story really well, who would that be?
Yeah, when I've interviewed people years ago when I would interview people on my podcast, this is not the answer, but a related answer. I would ask them what's their favorite book.
Uh,
And for many people who don't read, it's one or two books, right? It's, Dick
mhm.
and Jane book or whatever.
Yeah,
So it's easy to come up with an answer, but if you've read lots of books, it's hard to come up with the answer.
yeah.
For me,
Mhm.
it's hard for me to because there's so many great stories there. There's a guy, Scott Martin, who's in the Worthington chapter. He was in the organization before I was, and he's still around. He's going on 30 years in the organization, still pretty young.
Wow.
And he'll tell the story that he met his wife through the organization. Somebody in
Wow.
his chapter just said, "Hey, my neighbor's daughter's home from college. She's looking for a date for a party or whatever." And now here they are, however many years later, 20 years later, I got three kids. And, and, they,
Huh.
and I, we, people don't come to the organization uh, to get soulmates, but it happens. But yeah, there's certainly been people, another person, Gina Winterstein, um, her and I met February of '95 in the chapter we both joined. It was a brand new chapter in Westerville, Ohio. And, um, I've just a great story of somebody who she worked for a company and then got promoted. And then at one point just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. And I remember those 2 years where she was trying to build something all on her own. But now here she is, and she's got this telecommunications business, and it's doing well. She had 3 grown kids and grandkids, and it's amazing how, over time it really builds for people. But it's always a difficult thing because um, it's in many networking is not like winning the lottery, right? You win the
Uh-huh.
lottery, and all of a sudden somebody calls your numbers, and life has changed. Networking's not like that. Networking is more like a tree growing, right? It's just sometimes you just can't even see it's growing, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh,
Uh-huh.
that's huge. I didn't
Yeah.
realize this. And I think that's why people kind of swear it off from time to time is that they want it to go faster. They want it to go
Uh-huh.
faster. And the reality is it's just going to go at its own pace, and there's nothing you can do to, well, as I shared before, I was talking to a guy I interviewed 5 years ago, and he's coming out of he's got a different situation, and just reconnecting, and those things happen where you
Uh-huh.
have a connection with somebody and nothing comes from it. You can't really judge networking based on time. It's, well,
Uh-huh.
you meet somebody in 6 months from now, something. Well, you don't know that. It could be 6 years,
Right.
but it's you've really just set in motion all these little things, and some are going to come back to you sooner than others. Some are not, may not seem like they don't come back to you at all, but you heard about AmSpirit through somebody else. And
Uh-huh.
I don't know who that is, and it doesn't necessarily matter, but they heard about it from somebody, and they heard about it from somebody. And so somewhere along the way, I set something in motion that
Uh-huh.
made its way to you.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of how networking kind of sometimes can move at a glacial pace.
Uh-huh.
But with networking, while it might move slowly, you can it's very scalable in that you can get a lot of those balls in the air, or whatever metaphor you want. You're going to get a lot of different things kind of moving out there, and then they'll just start coming back slowly in time. Whereas like cold calling or knocking on doors and stuff like that, that's not scalable at all. That's
Right.
just, if you're not doing it, it's not happening. Whereas with networking, you do something, you record a podcast, even if it's a solo episode, it's out there, and somebody is going to be listening to that. And 3 years from now, they're going to say, I got my own business now. I'm going to call Andy Milligan. I listened to that show. It's really, I've got it saved on my phone. I listened to it. It was just really insightful. I'm turning my business into more of a big boy business, if you will. I need him. And that's going to happen. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you who, but you're doing the things you need to be doing.
Yeah. And I think you described that really well because that's the overcome that people have. And when you come from that place of when you come from the place of need, which is where a lot of new business owners come from, you think, okay, all you're seeing is the contrast between where you are and where you want to be, and our mind defaults towards the quickest way to solve that problem. And instinct tells us it's the fast things to do. But when you see these case studies and you make like the stock market analogy of like how every little relationship that you invest in compounds over just the long haul, it's pretty undeniable, how high the ROI actually is. And that kind of leads me to a question I really wanted to ask you. So it was a really good springboard. But do you have any ways that you've practically maintained a network? I know there's some people, like, I'll give you an example of like a good, like, tactical habit because you start to meet a lot of people. Like Frank, when I first founded the business, I went so hard in on networking, making relationships, and just telling other people about what you do. That's the
Right.
foundation of marketing. And you start to meet a lot of people. And something that I've started doing is you think of someone throughout the week, you see them online or something, you add their contact to a day in the calendar, and when that day comes, you just have a list of people that you can like tangibly reach back out to. I think social media is a good first step in order to maintaining a network because it reduces the friction and you're more visible to people. And that's why, I mean, And I inflated you up a little bit when it comes to content because that's something that I think you strived on is keeping consistent on that front and letting people know about you through that way. But do you have any tangible habits when you think of maintaining a network? You've had these people that you've already met and maybe you haven't come across in a while. Do you have any practical habits for keeping in touch?
I mean, I don't know that it's anything necessarily conscious. I tend to stay in contact with the people who where there's a give and a take, right? 95% of the people I run into talk to me and they're in it for themselves. And I
Mhm,
don't mean that in a bad way because, they have a family to feed and they've got their goals and dreams but they don't really understand. They don't understand what it takes. And they'll come at me and say, and had one this morning, "Hey, I would like for you to make my service as part of what you offer." And then I'll just, you basically sell me. And that, to me, that's not appealing. I'm all of a sudden becoming his sales rep. And that, to me, that's
mhm,
not appealing. It's not a reason for us to stay in contact. But I do know other
mhm.
people out there. There's a guy by the name of Terry Bean up in Detroit, Berta Medina, who lives down in Orlando, Florida, Marlies Vaher, who's over in Estonia. I mean, these are people who routinely will come back at me and say, "Hey, what do you got going? Love to catch up. I want to share what I've got going." And they'll give me ideas and they'll introduce me to people. And so those are the types of people I tend to keep in my sphere, if you will. And it's not every month that we talk. It may be once every 6 months or once a year, or sometimes more frequently, depending upon what's going on. But I try to be intentional about keeping in touch with those people, if you will.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
again, I need to survive too. I have goals and aspirations and I can't invest in everyone. I'm happy to respond to people. And there's a book out there called Give and Take by Dr. Adam Grant. And in there he talks
Yeah.
about 5-minute favors. And I'm a
Mhm,
big proponent of 5-minute favors.
mhm,
It doesn't take me long to send an email and saying, "Hey, great, here's if you want to look into AmSpirit, do this, or let me introduce you to this person, or this or that." So 5-minute favors are easy. It's when somebody wants to take an hour of your time and it's really all about them.
mhm.
And I'm not trying to be selfish, but I only have 24 hours in the day too,
Right.
8 of which I should be sleeping. So
Yeah, no, that's really good. And um when like I said in the beginning, I think you also do a really good job of keeping the door open, making yourself accessible so that you have that filter when people are genuine and um it's easy to present opportunities to you. Like you present yourself very well. Um, so when and that the thing you said there kind of reminded me of your social media episode. Like I just remember laughing when I was listening to this, but like reading some of the cold outreaches you got on LinkedIn. Um, where like people are offering to like, oh, you should start a podcast or have you ever thought about writing a book? And he goes, well, if you did your research, I actually have several books, I have 800 episodes of a podcast. Um, so yeah, and like it's the same way too. Like it's you want to invest in other people, and sometimes you have to hold your ground in terms of where how much of your energy you can give out, right? Because you do have a limited amount. And I think that's a good precedent to set just for yourself is making yourself accessible for other people to be that person to reach out and take it on themselves. But also, like you said, 5-minute favors like that are a really good thing to lean on. Um, um, so kind of transitioning the talk here, where can people like learn more about AmSpirit and, get in touch with the chapter for themselves? We do have a lot of local listeners. Um, and obviously you have a ton of resources out there, several books, several podcasts. Where can people get in touch?
yeah, I tell people the best way to, I guess, learn about me is go to frankagin.com, and then that networks out into certainly my contact information, my email, LinkedIn, if that's your thing. And you can certainly go to the AmSpirit website from there. On the AmSpirit website, there's an FAQ that you can go and learn more information about it. But if you want to go visit a group, I would encourage people to visit a group. We are not hard sell. You know that it's not hard
Uh,
sell. You come in, if it's not for you, that's great, but you will meet people and it might not be for you, but there'll be people there that can help you, take wherever you're at to the next step, so certainly that's another thing. People can email me and I'll, I try to respond. At some point, maybe I run, at some point, Sam Walton couldn't visit every Walmart. I mean, it's just reality, right? It's just, there's a physical limitation. So I know there's a limit to it. I'm not there, I'm not there. And it's not a, I enjoy, you know, I get a kick out of, seeing kids, people that my kids went to school with and helping them. Oh my gosh, Nick Workman. My son went to kindergarten with Nick Workman. He's in a chapter, so I'm going to help Nick, right? He doesn't know me. I don't know him, but you know what? I want to see other people be successful. If the people around you become more successful, it just raises you up. So, email me, contact me, or just go visit a group. Someone will take care of you.
Yeah, we'd love to have you at the Dublin chapter. It's popping off, it's growing. And that's also like, again, we talk about the lowering the barrier to entry. Like, I don't think, like, I visited several chapters before Dublin
Yeah.
was the one. And, I just was sold instantly by Bruce's charm. And that was the one I chose. But I visited the Dublin Metro chapter. I got in touch with Dean Curry. And odds are, you go to one chapter, you're going to meet someone that you resonate with and that you want to come back
Yeah.
to. So
Well,
I encourage everyone. Go
I
ahead.
think that's the answer, Andy, is go visit your chapter. I mean, I think that if they're a fan of this program and if they're listening, they likely are. You just have them bring them to your group, and if that's not a good fit because it's the day or time or just there's that category is already filled, then we can find them in another group. But have them experience AmSpirit as you do.